Hello, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News, Friday, April 17th, 9 a.m. Happy weekend to you all. And this is a very odd topic, not for me, because I know where I stand, but for the people involved. And we're going to talk about the extension of the FISA court situations. Uh, Early on Friday, meaning this morning, they approved the short-term renewal until April 30th of the surveillance program, which is involving around FISA. Believe it or not, the Republicans wanted to slow it down and possibly not vote for it. And of all people, Donald Trump wanted it renewed, which, knowing that the amount of surveillance and illegal activity that was brought against him, one would wonder why he would want to continue that particular program. But that's how it is. So the big thing here is surveillance. This program, by its name, which would make you think it is going to be involving foreign enemies, has done very little, as far as I know, to do that. More likely, it's targeted people within the United States since its inception. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe there was one or two things. This is a law that came out when they formed Homeland, and we just decided big surveillance, big security, big everything, but no big thinking. And now we've had it. It's been used against the American citizens more times than it's been used against the enemies. So let's talk about that. And let's talk about when people think surveillance is about stopping terrorism, foreign threats, overseas plots, enemies outside of the wire. And the story that we've been told since September 11th fits into that wheelhouse. But what if the real situation isn't who the system was built for, but who it's being used on? And at the center of this debate is Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA. On paper, it allows U.S. intelligence agencies to monitor foreign threats and targets without a warrant. Foreign targets. And that's how it's been sold. But in reality, there is no such thing as a purely foreign system anymore. Americans use the same platforms and servers and networks as the rest of the world. So, in that gray area, when intelligence agencies collect foreign communications, they're inevitably collecting American communications too. And this is not by accident, it is by structure. And here's what gets it more serious. Once that debate is data, yeah, debate. Once that data is collected, agencies like the FBI and the NSA can query databases, including searches involving Americans, and mostly often without a warrant. And if they need to do certain things, it'll involve the FISA court, as you've heard, which allows for warrantless wiretaps pretty much, or wiretaps a lot of time that would not meet the criteria of a standard warrant, standard situation for a wiretap, like criminal investigations, aka The Wire, the Baltimore TV show, right? So that is known as the backdoor search issue. Okay, you weren't the target, but you're in the system, so we'll check you out anyway. And now this isn't a theoretical concern. Okay, before anybody tells you, oversight bodies, including the FISA court and internal reviews, have already documented problems. There have been improper queries involving U.S. persons, searches tied to protests, which was against the January 6th people. Mostly, they don't say that, but that's what it was. Queries involving journalists and even political figures, including the President of the United States. Not massive conspiracies, but repeated compliance failures. Okay, and here's the key point is these issues were found inside the system itself by the very mechanisms meant to oversee it. So when people raise concern about abuse, they are not speculating. They are pointing to a pattern that is very visible, especially in violation of the U.S. Fourth Amendment, unreasonable search and seizure. Right? And some, I guess it would be fifth, because if they're wiretapping and you're talking and you're not supposed to have a wiretap, then you're actually incriminating yourself. But you constitutional lawyers out there tell us, but it's definitely the fourth in there. All right. At the same time, the threat landscape has shifted. 9/11, the focus was external, foreign terrorists, ISIS. When are we going to get bin Laden, stuff like that? But have you noticed after the Bushes went out of the White House, the about face towards internal enemies, especially white extremists, and we can give you two examples, Ruby Ridge and Waco, Texas, that became our national police's and intelligence people's number one enemy du jour. So today, agencies talk increasingly about domestic threats, and that includes racially motivated extremism, but not anti-Semitism, right? You can find probably 10 true white supremacists out there on a good day, whereas anti-Semitism does not can make you a white supremacist. Anti-Semitism makes you a professor at Harvard. Okay. So you have racially motivated extremism, that's in there. The issue is not whether those threats exist. The issue is this. What happens when you take a surveillance system built for foreign enemies and targets and operate it in an environment that includes Americans? Because that's when the lines are going to start to blur. Same as you always hear Central Intelligence Agency is not supposed to operate inside of American borders, nor is the Army. But yet a device that was designed for people of that type to operate is being used in the United States. So everything now depends on definitions. If categories are narrow, focused on clear violent actors, the system remains contained. If you say, I want everybody who's in the Muslim Brotherhood and I want to bring them to justice, then you have something. If you say, I want everybody who sits in a trailer in Arkansas and yells the N word at their television, not so much. Okay. But if those categories expand, as we just said, even gradually, then the scope of surveillance expands with them. And this is where the public trust problem sets in. There is a growing perception that standards are not evenly applied. Well, we know that. Certain viewpoints receive more scrutiny than others. And whether that perception is fully accurate or not, once it exists, it changes how the system is viewed. So let's bring it to the fundamentals here. The Fourth Amendment, everyone's favorite. If you remember Hunter Thompson, hit him with the Fourth Amendment, Laz. The Fourth Amendment is supposed to protect Americans from unreasonable searches. It requires warrants, probable cause, and specificity. It's a good one. But under Section 702, we have a system where your communications can be collected without a warrant, stored, and later searched. And that's not a loophole. That is the operating system in 702. Okay. So later on, maybe if you commit something, then we'll go back and find other information. Wrong. Shouldn't be done that way. That's what warrants are for. That's why there are judges that allow for wiretaps in cases that they've had them. And you even see how they worked with the mafia. They couldn't do certain things under the wiretap, right? That doesn't exist under 702. They do what they want. Now, let's speak directly to those pushing to renew this authority. Okay, if you believe this tool is necessary for national security, I'm going mostly with the Republicans and even the Trump administration on that. If you believe this tool is necessary for national security, then fine. Make the case. Make the case for it. But understand this, you are not just passing a law for today. You are continuing to build a system that will be used tomorrow, probably against you. And Trump should know this. He's had it happen before. Every power you approve, every safeguard that you weaken, every warrant requirement that you waive does not disappear when the political control changes. It transfers when the whip hand transfers. So even though you guys may be kind of in charge today and the Republican Party is a leaky ship at best, the socialists, on the other hand, have no problem doing any of the things that you have had wet dreams about doing. Okay? And if it transfers to them, and history shows this clearly, surveillance authorities expand and they endure. So the real question is not whether you choose to trust the current administration, it's whether you trust every future administration. And the answer is going to be no. Then the responsibility is obvious. which is tighten the system up now, require the warrants for U.S. personal queries, and enforce real penalties for misuse, especially for political gains, narrow the scope of allowable searches, and you have to deal with these because if you don't, you are not preserving national security. You are normalizing a level of surveillance state power that will eventually be used in ways you cannot control. So, this debate is not about whether the threats exist because they do. It's about whether the system we built to confront those threats still fits within the constitutional limits that define this country. Because once surveillance systems expand beyond their original boundaries, they really can't contract them. You have to look back at the time that this was put into effect, the same with Homeland Security. This is when we legalized torture at any cost, right? These are the same people that brought you that. So don't be so fucking glib when this stuff is out there because the people who masterminded these programs were if not results, definitely appearance oriented to make it look like they knew what they were doing and that they meant business. So if you have if you have any input or influence over any of your congressional types, this is one of the things you do not want to consider to be allowed to continue. Once again, I'm kind of like, what was Trump thinking? I don't know, but there are better ways to catch criminals than this. There are better ways to catch terrorists than this because too many Americans get caught up in the net when you're using this type of a thing. So that's all I have for you on that one. It's Friday, it's starting to rain. Sorry about that. Can't help you. And we will talk later. Goodbye.